We made it in. It was with the authorization of someone who's been here for a really long time, who understood that we had a congressional duty to enter the building and to see the facility. Shortly after we were let in, two officials came in and said that they received a message that we were no longer allowed to be in the building and that they were rescinding our invitation to come in and declining any further access to the building. What happened today is a blatant attempt to obstruct members of Congress from doing their oversight duties. When we appropriate funds as members of Congress, we are expected by the public to do oversight because the public requires their money be used with transparency and accountability. And what happened today is ICE agents deciding that we were no longer allowed to fulfill our constitutional duty.
Additionally, from this moment forward, if you're on public assistance, like almost all Somalis are, did you see where 94% of them are on public assistance? You can't wire money out of the country back to your bank account from where you came. It's massive numbers of people are scamming our country. You know, they came from a place with nothing, and they come here and they drive around in Mercedes-Benz. You know, the Mercedes-Benz dealers do well in that area of Minnesota. Can you believe it? They have nothing. They get welfare payments, and they have Mercedes-Benzes. Two suspected scammers in Minnesota, of which there are many. It's a great state. It was a great state. Now it's getting destroyed by that stupid governor. What a stupid guy he is. But he's a crook. We're investigating large-scale visa fraud, and the Department of Justice has already charged nearly 100 people in criminal conspiracies in Minnesota. We intend to imprison any fraudster, politician, or public official involved in these sick plots to loot and pillage our country. Think of that IIhan Omar. She lives in Somalia. They don't have a government. They don't have a military. They don't have police. They don't have anything. All they have is murder and robbing ships, bringing in ships, pirates. That's stopped. Same missile, ping. Think of it. She comes from a country with nothing, and she comes here and she tells us about our Constitution. I have a constitutional right to rip off the country. I guess she's a total scam artist. Anybody knows it. How do you let her get away with it? AOC +3. She was one of the three. They're all scammers.
I'm listening to all of this, and I keep coming back to the same thought. She should already be in jail, right along with Walz and their friends in the Democratic Party. None of this should even be controversial. When regular people break the law, there are consequences. Somehow, when politicians do it, we are supposed to pretend it's complicated. It's crazy. And what really gets me is how some of these people suddenly start quoting the law when it suits them. They will talk about oversight, transparency, accountability, all the buzzwords. But where was that energy when billions of dollars were being stolen right under their noses?
Protests continue in Minneapolis after a woman was fatally shot by an ICE agent. State investigators were in the area speaking with residents.
Minnesota investigators are going door to door in Minneapolis at the scene of last week's deadly shooting by an ICE agent. The State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension says it's collecting its own evidence after the FBI took charge of the investigation.
The violence, the complete impunity with which these agents are operating, we need to make sure that these people are not masked. We need to make sure that there is real accountability in all of these investigations.
It comes as DHS doubles down on defending the officer who fatally shot 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good, arguing he acted in self-defense. The agency says it's deploying more federal officers to Minnesota to protect other ICE agents.
Was this done to be anti-government and to try to change the behavior of ICE? And if the answer is yes, then sure, that's domestic terrorism.
But it's prompting criticism from some Democratic lawmakers that the administration is trying to, quote, cover up the shooting. Language the White House says could lead to more violence against federal officers.
President Trump and the entire Trump administration stands firmly with the brave men and women of ICE.
As the investigation continues, protesters gather outside a federal building in Minneapolis demanding accountability. The Trump administration says it's made more than 2,000 immigration arrests in Minnesota since the operation began last month.
We just had a press conference as the lead for the Progressive Caucus. Our caucus took a stand in not supporting any funding for DHS unless there are some real changes that take place when it comes to ICE and border control.
You, along with several other members, had a visit to a facility this weekend. We've seen a number of these visits to facilities. Now, there's legislation that requires admittance of Congress, members of Congress, unannounced to inspect these facilities. That was something that was put into the law years ago. And yet we've seen resistance from DHS officials, including famously in Newark, where Monica McIver was, sort of roughed up a bit by agents. She's now being prosecuted for that. What happened to you when you tried to visit a facility this weekend?
Well, we arrived, myself and two other members from the Minnesota congressional delegation. We made our presence known. We told them we were there to do oversight. We were originally let in. And given an initial tour, and then, 10 minutes or so in, the agent who was taking us around got a phone call. We do think it was probably from someone from D.C. and was told that we could no longer continue because something about the big, beautiful bill prohibited us from being able to do our oversight.
Minnesota and the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul are suing the federal government over the surge of ICE agents into the state. The Department of Homeland Security announced it would send more than 2,000 officers to the state after the fatal shooting of a woman by an ICE agent. The shooting has triggered mass protest across the United States, but the federal administration has been standing by the officer. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey claims the state is being targeted because it has Democrat leaders.
If the goal was immigration enforcement, if the goal were simply to look for people that are undocumented, Minneapolis and St. Paul would not be the place where you would go. There are countless more people that are undocumented in Florida and Texas and Utah. Why are they in these much smaller cities in the middle of the Midwest? The answer is very clear. It is politics.
Minnesota is seeking a request to halt the enforcement action or limit the operation. The state's Attorney General claims the surge in federal agents is a breach of the Constitution.
This is, in essence, a federal invasion of the Twin Cities and Minnesota, and it must stop. DHS agents have sown chaos and terror across the metropolitan area and in cities across the state of Minnesota.
You don't get to hide during the fraud and then show up later pretending to be the hero? No. And don't insult our intelligence. Watching a criminal try to explain their own innocence is painful. It's scripted, it's rehearsed, and you can tell it's not real. They talk like they memorized talking points instead of telling the truth. And people are asking real questions that nobody wants to answer. Like, where did the money go? How does someone on a government salary suddenly become a multi-millionaire? Where did the $30 million came from? You see, reporters should be asking that single question every day. But instead, they stay quiet. Then there's this whole claim about oversight duties. Okay, if oversight was a job, where were you when childcare centers, learning centers, autism programs were being loaded? Where was the outrage then? Where were the investigations? You don't get to claim obstruction now when you ignored massive fraud for years. And Minnesota didn't just allow fraud, it took part in it. That's the whole truth, ladies and gentlemen. This is not hate speech, no. And now the people are shocked that law enforcement is finally stepping in, interfering with federal officers. Isn't activism, it's stupidity. Because law enforcement exists for a reason, and trying to block them only make things worse. And what's wild is how these same people demand access to federal facilities, but the moment citizens ask questions, they get labeled racist or hateful. So we are not allowed to see what's happening in our own communities. But politicians, when they get this free access everywhere, that doesn't sit right with anyone paying attention. And let's be honest, this has nothing to do with oversight. This is about diverting attention away from corruption charges. Create chaos, cry obstruction, play the victim. It's an old playbook, and people are done falling for it. And don't forget, ICE isn't just operating in one city. They are cleaning up everywhere. Red states, blue states, big cities, small towns. That's their job. Politicians interfering only proves they are afraid of what might come out. And what really bothers people is the arrogance. Talking about accountability when you have never shown any. Acting like the rules don't apply to you. Acting shocked that consequences might finally show up at your door. That's crazy. Literally. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't about personality or party labels. It's about the law. If anyone else had done even half of what's been allegedly been done here, they would already be behind bars. Americans can see that clearly now. So people are talking and they are asking for the same thing over and over again. Real investigations, real charges, real jail time. Not excuses, not speeches, not distractions. Because until corrupt politicians are actually held accountable, nobody believes the system is fixed. And honestly, people aren't angry anymore. They are awake. Amen. Well, folks, if you enjoy that, be sure to click on the next. You will definitely enjoy it too.